Hello everyone, and welcome to your video which is going to focus on how to deal with fractions in equations. And so let me just give you an example of an equation that we're going to work with here so that you can see how ugly a situation this is. So let's say we have 1 over 2x plus 2 over 3x, and that whole thing is set equal to 4/9. So that's a lot of fractions, and we have fractions on both sides of the equation, and that can be a little daunting. What we are going to learn in this video are 3 different ways to approach solving this problem. The first way is that we are going to calculate our common denominator for just one side of the equation, and then we'll cross multiply because we'll wind up with 2 fractions set equal to each other, so we can cross multiply. The second technique that we're going to learn is to calculate a common denominator for everything, and then we're going to multiply the whole equation by that same common denominator and have it disappear. And then the third technique that we're going to learn is we're going to learn to calculate a common denominator for everything, then multiply all the numerators by that, and then cancel. So we're going to go through each one slowly, so don't worry that you didn't get all that the first time around. And in the final analysis, I don't care which of these techniques you pick. It doesn't make any difference to me whatsoever. I just want you to see that they all work, and I want you to have the chance to practice with them all so that you can discover your favorite. But as long as you don't make any mathematical errors, you'll get the same answer no matter what. So we're going to focus first on calculating the common denominator for one side and then cross multiplying. And I'm going to do this in blue so that it matches my little blue rule here. So I'm going to figure out a common denominator just for this side of the equation. And you should be able to see, I hope, that 6x would be a wonderful common denominator here. So I'm going to do 1 over 2x. In order to get to 6x, I have to multiply by 3. So I'll multiply the numerator and the denominator by 3. And then on this side of the equation, right now I have 2 times 3x. And to get to 6x, I have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. Now with this technique, I only have to worry about common denominators on one side of the equation. So over here, I'm just going to keep everything at 4/9, no trouble. All right, now let's simplify. 1 times 3 is 3, and my new denominator is, as you know, 6x. And then here, 2 times 2 is 4, and my new denominator is 6x. And again, this is all set equal to 4/9, and it's okay in this technique that this does not have the same denominator. All right, let's add. 3 plus 4 is 7, so we wind up with 7 over 6x equals 4/9. Now with cross multiplication, what we do is we go kind of crisscross across those 2 fractions. So whenever you have 2 fractions set equal to each other, you are welcome to use this technique. 7 times 9 is 63, so that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is 6x times 4, which will be 24x. I'm going to divide both sides by 24, and I get x equals 2.625. And that is our answer for x. All right, so hopefully this doesn't seem too weird to you. Again, we did a common denominator for just one side of the equation, and then we cross-multiplied to solve for x. All right, let's move to our second option. Our second option for calculating is, where shall I put this? I'll put this down. Can you see that down there? Okay. We're going to calculate a common denominator, but this time it has to be a common denominator for everything that's here. So, let me see, what would be a good common denominator here? it's got to be a common denominator for everything. So I'm going to make it 18x because 2x goes into 18x, 3x goes into 18x, and 9 goes into 18x. So I'm going to make that my common denominator. If you didn't think of that, if you wanted to do 9 times 3 is 27 times 2 is 54 and make your common denominator 54x, that's fine with me. I don't care. Okay, but you pick a common denominator. And then you multiply, you make that common denominator work. So let's do this. Let's do 1 over 2x, that's what we have now. And to get to 18x, I have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 9. And then I have 2 over 3x, and I have to multiply this numerator and denominator by 6, because 3x times 6 gives me 18x. And then this over here, in order to get to 18x, I have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2x. So now I'm going to have the exact same denominator for each fraction. So this will be 9 over 18x plus 12 over 18x equals 8x over 18x. Okay, so now once I've gotten everything with common denominator terms, I can go ahead and add these two together if I want. So that would be 21 over 18x equals 8x over 18x. Right, that's just 9 plus 12 is 21. And once I do that, now I'm going to do this funky little thing where I multiply both sides of my equation by 18x. So I'm multiplying the whole equation by the common denominator. And that has the effect of canceling out the denominator. So I'm left with 21 equals 8x. And if you divide both sides by 8, you get x equals 2.625. That's the exact same thing that we got before over here, but we approached it in a different way. Here we did our common denominator just for 1/2 of the equation. Here we did it for the whole equation. All right, now there's one more technique that you could use, and that is our green technique. And the green technique says, again, we're going to calculate a common denominator for everything, and then we're going to multiply that by all the numerators. So again, we'll use our common denominator of 18x. So we'll get, but we won't have to make our fractions look like that. So we have 1 over 2x. We just multiply just the numerator by 18x. And then we have 2 over 3x, and we multiply just the numerator by 18x. And that equals 4 over 9, and we multiply just the numerator by 18x. Now, this might seem weird to you, but it's actually pretty cool the way it works, because now we can start simplifying things. So I can say, well, 2x can go into 18x 9 times. 3x can go into 18x 6 times. And 9 can go into 18x 2x times. So that leaves us with, this is all gone except for the 9 times 1, so 9 plus, and this is going to be 6 times 2 that's left, so that's 12, equals, and this is 4 times 2x, which is 8x. So that's 21 equals 8x. Divide both sides by 8, and x equals 2.625. So again, we have the same answer all 3 times, but we approached our problem solving in different ways. Let me repeat again. I don't care which way you pick. I just want you to be familiar enough with each of them so that you can decide which one you like. All right, we are going to do one more problem, which I know is going to make this video very long and ugly, but I think we need one more example. So let's do it. So in this case, our equation is going to be as follows. It is going to be 1 over 3x plus 5 over 6x equals 3 over 1 minus x. So this is an uglier equation than the one that we did just a few seconds ago, but it'll still work. Okay, so let's do our blue calculation first, which is we're going to calculate the common denominator for one side of the equation. If I look here at this side of the equation, the obvious common denominator would be 6x. So let's do that. So right now we have 1 over 3x, but we have to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2 so that we get to 6x. And then over here, we're just going to keep this as 5 over 6x because we've already got the right denominator. And then over here, we're not even going to worry about changing anything because that's not what we have to do for this method. All right, so then that becomes 2 over 6x plus 5 over 6x equals 3 over 1 minus x. The next step would be to add together those two numerators. So we get 7 over 6x equals 3 over 1 minus x. Now we are going to cross multiply. So if I do 7 times 1x on one side of the equation, 1 minus x I should say, and then on this side of the equation is 6x times 3, or 18x. That gives me, I'm going to distribute now, 7 minus 7x equals 18x. We have x's on both sides of the equation, which is just annoying, so we will add 7x to both sides. That gives us 7 equals 25x. Divide both sides by 25. And you get x equals 0.28. So that is our answer for this problem, is 0.28. All right, let's calculate it our second way and see how that works out. So our second way says that we have to calculate a common denominator for everything. And when you look at this problem right here, it might not be clear to you what the common denominator is. And it's not clear to me either. I like the 6x, but then we need to multiply the whole thing by 1 minus x. So if I turned everything into that, I would be in good shape. All right, let's work on it. So the first fraction we have is 1 over 3x. And to turn it into this, I would need to multiply by 2 and then by 1 minus x. So times 2 times 1 minus x, okay? And then we need to add that to 5 over 6x. This has to be multiplied by 1 minus x and 1 minus x so that I get that whole thing in the denominator. And then that is going to be set equal to 3 over 1 minus x, but we still have to multiply it by 6x. Okay, so now let's simplify this a little bit. So this is going to be 2 times 1 minus x over 6x over 1 minus x plus 5 times 1 minus x over 6x times 1 minus x equals 18x over 6x times 1 minus x. I just flipped that around so that they all look exactly the same. You don't have to if you don't want to. Okay, so now that we have that, I am going to combine these numerators. So I get 2 times 1 minus x plus 5 times 1 minus x over 6x times 1 minus x equals 18x over 6x times 1 minus x. Whew, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Yeah, but that's okay. It's going to work out because now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 6x times 1 minus x. You can imagine that just over the number 1. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. 6x times 1 minus x over 1. That has the effect of canceling these out. So we are left with 2 times 1 minus x plus 5 times 1 minus x equals 18x. That's 2 minus 2x plus 5 minus 5x equals 18x. All I'm doing is I'm just distributing that 2 over everything in parentheses and then distributing the 5 over everything in parentheses. Now I'm going to combine some like terms. I'll wind up with 7 minus 7x equals 18x. I'll add 7x to each side. 7 equals 25x. Divide both sides by 25. And you get x equals 0.28. Now you might be saying to yourself, this seems very long and ugly. To which I would say, I completely agree. This is my least favorite method. I would never pick this method unless, like, I don't know, I was being forced to by some big meanie teacher. Fortunately for you, you do not have a big meanie teacher, so you can pick whichever method you like. So I'm just going to rewrite our equation here because I had to move on to a separate sheet of paper. And I wanted to make sure that we had plenty of enough room for technique number 3. Technique number 3 is to calculate a common denominator for everything. So our common denominator is still going to be 6x times 1 minus x. But this time, I'm just going to multiply all the numerators by that. So my new and improved equation is 1 times 6x times 1 minus x, and I'll just keep that over 3x, plus, sorry about that, plus 5, that's this 5, times my common denominator of 6x times 1 minus x, and I'm going to keep it over 6x, equals, there you go, equals 3 times 6x times 1 minus x, and I'm going to keep that over 1 minus x. Now I'm kind of excited because now I get to do some canceling things out. So I can reduce this 3x and this 6x, and that just turns into 2 because 3x times 2 makes 6x. And over here I can cross out my 6x's. That's easy to see. And over here, I can cross out my 1 minus x. Perfect. All right, so let's simplify. So here we have 1 times 2, which is just 2. So we have 2 times 1 minus x plus 5 times 1 minus x equals 3 times 6x. That's what's left. So 2 minus 2x plus 5 minus 5x, again just distributing those over the term in parentheses, equals 18x. That's 7 minus 7x equals 18x, and then this should look pretty familiar. You have to add 7x to both sides. You get 7 equals 25x, and when you are done crunching all those numbers, you get x equals 0.28. So using this third method, which is actually a pretty swankalicious kind of method, but using this third method, you get to the answer pretty painlessly. All right, remember, I don't care which method you use. I just care that you pick a method and then use it correctly so that you can get the right answers.